We have here Intera Green Burial by Mueller Memorial with us today to talk about, living well, that's great, but dying well. How do we live our conservation commitments in our blessing as well? I'm sure we're going to get a lot of facts and stats from these fine ladies from Intera Green Burial by Mueller Memorial. Up first, we have Nicole, who's a licensed funeral director with them. That's nice. And then Taylor's going to be up here. She's the director of communications. Talk to us a little bit more about what is this thing? Green burial. Well, I don't even know. So I'm way out of my depth here. So I'm going to ask them to come on up. They're going to talk at you a little bit, and then we'll have time for a Q&A at the end. All right. So glad you could join us online. We'll be sure to get your questions too. And without further ado, Nicole, come on, take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm Nicole. I'm with Mueller Intera Green Burial by Mueller Memorial. I'm one of our directors. So our first slide kind of talks about who we are. So we do have, this is our staff, me and Taylor, and we have our amazing office manager, and then our other directors up here as well. So Intera Green Burial is a signature service by Mueller Memorial. So we are a licensed funeral home, and we have a location in White Bear Lake and on the east side of St. Paul. We have become specialists in ecological burial options, and in doing so, we spent the time and dedicated ourselves to make sure that we are Green Burial Council certified. So Green Burial Council is this amazing council of people who work with funeral homes, cemeteries, and other green options to make sure that we are following correct ecological kind of guidelines, and we're on a list. So if you were to go to greenburialcouncil.com, you would see that we are one of two only funeral homes in Minnesota, and we were the first on there for a while. So we like to say that there are different shades of green. So there's a lot of different options out there. We're going to go through a lot of different things today. But what I first want to talk to you about are the different shades that there are. Because maybe some things make more sense for you, and there's different ways that you can do this. So we have what we call Intera Eco, Intera Natural, and Intera Pure. So depending on type of cemetery, type of casket, type of other items that you wish to have, would determine what shade of green that you would choose. So Intera Eco means that you can choose whatever clothing you want, where you don't really have to focus on it, what kind of material it's made of. But all of these have no chemical preservation. So all of these are not going to have any embalming procedure done, nothing like that. All of them we do all natural body care and cleansing. So there's a washing ceremony. We wash you and then we dress you whatever clothing you choose. So Intera Pure, you're going to want all biodegradable clothing. So no buttons, no zippers. A lot of times people will do like a wool shroud or a cotton, all natural cotton shroud in that option. And then the type of casket you select, which we'll show about. And then the big thing is the cemetery. So that kind of determines what shade of green you're going to go to based on what cemetery, because not all cemeteries have green burial options. So first we'll talk about the type of containers that are out there. So as some of you who's all familiar with a traditional kind of casket service, who's all been to a traditional casket service? So you might see, kind of like you see the metal caskets, usually that person in that casket is embalmed. There's some cosmetics done. They're wearing maybe their favorite outfit. So the casket that you choose, if you go the green burial route, will be a little bit different because we're going to want to make sure that it's made of all natural material. The caskets that we have are actually all fair trade as well. So the one on the left is actually made of a woven seagrass. The one in the center looks the most like a traditional casket. It is all solid wood and they use all natural materials to keep it together. So it's not going to be, there's no metal screws, there's nothing in there, but it does look the most like a traditional casket. And then the one on the end is actually just a carrier for a shroud. So the person inside is wrapped inside an all natural shroud, and then it's a woven carrier, and they're able to put flowers directly on top of their person. So the flowers, they have a ceremony, it's directly on top. Yeah, it is. So depending on what kind, it's all personal preference, all personal choice. If you want to have a lid or not, if you want to have a more traditional looking casket, either way, these all meet the natural burial container requirements. So with green burial, a lot of people wonder, what is different? You know, we've been to that traditional funeral. I have a church affiliation. Can I still include that? With green burial, you're still going to create a ceremony. You're still able to have all the same things that you would think about in a traditional burial setting. We can still, you know, with permission of your church, we can still have you here. You can be uninvolved. You can be in that natural container. You can be at our funeral home. You can have visitation. So all of that is still possible. Now, a lot of people, though, are creating additional ceremony that comes along with green burial. So sometimes families like to come in and we'll use some essential oil and some warm water and we'll do that washing ceremony. You know, you can be more present with your person. You can wash them, you can help us dress them, or, you know, shroud them, whatever your comfort level is. And then when we get to the graveside, you can do, you know, a larger encompassing. We've had people who've brought wildflowers. You know, I have a story where someone's tree fell down the same day they passed away, and they brought in the twigs from the tree that fell down and put it right in that carrier with them. So we're able to create these beautiful ceremonies still that you would do with the traditional one. The only real difference with natural burial is the timing of it. So in Minnesota, there is certain laws around timing when someone is uninvolved. So embalming is a procedure that we use as a funeral director in order to help preserve someone's physical body for that delay in time for us to have that ceremony. With a green burial, if you are uninvolved, we have to have you buried within 6 days. That's the rule in Minnesota. As long as you have some kind of cold room or refrigerated area where you can keep that person's body until that burial can take place. If you don't have that, then you only have 3 days. We do have that availability, so that gives us 6 days to have that service, that time to say goodbye in those ceremonies. So it is a little bit, you know, of a quicker turnaround, but there are times where, you know, especially during COVID, where we've Zoomed people in, kind of like you're doing today. You're able to gather the family that can be there within that time frame, and still have people that could not be present via Zoom or, you know, over Google Hangouts, whatever we need to do. So with green burial, we still are able to do anything that you wish, anything that is a religious thing that you prefer, any kind of ceremony. Now, the big thing is green cemeteries. So where are the green cemeteries located? Because there's not a lot of green cemeteries currently right now. So there are some hybrid options and there are natural burial options. Most traditional cemeteries, no matter where you go. So if you're familiar with Lakewood Cemetery in Minneapolis, that's a very traditional cemetery. They do not have a hybrid option and they do not have a natural burial option. But if you already have property there or like a traditional one, we can reach out to them and see if they would allow what's called a bottomless vault. So a cemetery, a traditional cemetery often requires what's called a vault or an outer burial container. That theory is to help not only protect the casket, but to protect the earth. So when a hole is dug, they want to make sure that the ground does not sink or flow. They have to preserve that ground. So most traditional cemeteries will allow a bottomless vault. I do know Lakewood does as well. So if you do have property there, no worries. You can still do kind of like that middle ground of Terra green. You can still have the natural containers. You don't have to be involved and you'll be on the earth. There's just a little vault around you on top. Hybrid options. So there actually is one close to you, the Roseland Cemetery in Whiteside. And then there is one in Minneapolis called Oak Hill. And there's one in Roseville that we work with quite frequently called Roselawn. What that means is that they allow natural burial to happen. You don't have to have that vault. You can have your natural container. Everything can be green. It's just they don't have a green section. So you're placed among other traditional burials. So you can still have, you know, the traditional headstone. It looks like you're in the cemetery, but you're actually a natural burial there. Most of them do charge an additional fee because of the ground care they have to do, that's the care for. But these cemeteries will allow you to have that option. Now, a natural burial option, like Resurrection Cemetery in Mendota Heights, as you can kind of see in the image here, this is their gate of heaven section. So what that means is that they don't have any headstones. They don't have any, there's no traditional burials in this section. It's only natural. They keep it preserved as a meadowland. And what they do is the areas are numbered by stone. And then at the end of each area, there's actually a really big stone that you engrave your name on. So it doesn't, it looks like a completely flat meadowland. And that allows us to have a pure green cemetery pretty close by us. So with green burial, that is an option that allows us to have a very sustainable burial, no embalming, we have the casket, we're able to have the body present. Now we thought there might be some other green options that people are interested in. So we're going to veer off course from the green burial a little bit and talk about some other options that we offer as well that are green. So we have green cremation, it's called alkaline hydrolysis. It's a scientific term. So what is alkaline hydrolysis? Sometimes it's called aquamation, sometimes it's called green cremation, sometimes it's called water-based cremation. What it is instead of using flame, you actually use water with an alkaline solution mixed in and a little bit of heat to help accelerate the tissue breakdown. So what's in the solution is it's 95% water and then 5% a really strong base. So a lot of people automatically think it's very acidic, but it's the complete opposite. It's very basic, and that is introduced into a chamber. Over 6 to 8 hours, that water-based solution in a little bit of heat, about 350 degrees heat, breaks down their natural tissue. And then we're left with the same results that we have with flame cremation, except we have the cremated remains and then a non-toxic sterile water that often is introduced into our wastewater system, goes through a treatment facility, is often used in fertilizer and other things. So what's kind of the difference? What do you see the difference in? So flame cremation uses the natural gas and it heats to about 1400 to 1600 degrees in order to break down our natural tissues. The water one only uses about 350 degrees of heat, just a little bit of warmth there. The reason why it's often called green cremation is because flame cremation actually releases the carbon into the atmosphere, where water cremation actually captures that and sequesters it. So you see a lot less carbon emissions being released into the air than we do with flame immersed in water. And then the look of cremated remains are a little bit different. So with flame cremation, you can see that they're a little bit more gray. They have some kind of chippy fragments in them. With aquamation, they are very white, almost like a pure white, and kind of powdery. And you usually get about 20 to 30% more of the cremated remains back. Because you have less loss from transfer and things like that. And also it's just with the process, it's a very gentle water process. So we get a little bit more back. Now it does take a little bit longer. So flame cremation typically takes about 2 to 4 hours. With the water base at 6 to 8 because there's that water process. And then there is a drying process. And then there is the same as flame cremation. We process the remains down into this powder form. So what can you do with the cremated remains? There actually are a lot of green options as well with aquamated cremated remains versus flame cremated remains. You can be buried in the ground, you can be above ground, you can be turned into stone. So we partner with this amazing company. You can see this here. You can actually send your cremated remains. It's about a 4-month process and we'll turn you into stone. It's all your remains, and we've had a few people do this. My favorite thing that someone said they're going to do with it is that they're going to hike all the natural, all the state park forest trails and leave little stones everywhere. And then they have a little stone garden in their kitchen as well. So that's been my favorite so far. People can paint them, you can do whatever you like with the stones. So it's the cremated remains, but just in a hard form. So you don't have that powder anymore. You can spread or scatter them on land. I will say you can scatter on any land that you own privately, but if it's public, please get permission. Or don't tell me what you're doing with it. And then you can also turn it into gems or diamonds. You can send a small portion in and they can create diamond. We also have a really amazing partner called Better Place Forests. It's in Scandia, and you can actually purchase a tree, and they allow alkaline hydrolysis or aquamated remains to be placed there as well. What that means is that they have forest land that is kept in conservatorship, so it's not going to change. You can walk through the forest, you can pick out the tree that calls to you, and then when you do pass, your family can bring your cremated remains, and they create a little ceremony there. That's called kind of like a nesting ceremony. So you mix the cremated remains with the earth and some of the material from that forest. You create a nest in front of your tree, and then you slowly reintroduce yourself right in front of that tree. And you can have memorialization there as well. So there's a lot of different options that you can do. Anything that you can do with a flame-based cremated remains, you can do with water-based cremated remains. It's just a greener option for cremation. I'm going to bring Taylor up now, and she's going to talk about this great option.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. So good when people respond. My name is Taylor Johnson, and I'm the Director of Communications at Lincoln Memorial and Integrity Burial by Lincoln Memorial. And why am I the person talking about this? I'm the person who kind of to kind of go backwards in our story a little bit. I will start with our good friend. What do I do? I'm a right clicker, she's a left clicker. Just discovered this about us. All right, so Steve, who's Steve? Steve was a teacher in Matamidi. And after the pandemic, he realized that he wasn't going to be able to go back to teaching in person when they started returning in person. And so he retired. He had MS, so he had an illness that kept him from working. And then when he took his early retirement, unfortunately, soon after, he found out that he had an incurable form of cancer that was a terminal diagnosis. He's a heck of a guy. And of course, very positive and very Steve way. He was paying attention, you know, kind of thinking about what he was going to do, like a lot of people are, about what they're going to do with their disposition at the time that when their time comes. And he was thinking, okay, well, I really kind of want to go back to the earth in a really natural way, something that's positive for the environment. And he was listening to a radio panel, and they were talking about natural organic reduction or human composting. And he thought, well, that's the one for me. I'm doing that. He immediately discovered also that it's not a legal form of disposition in the state of Minnesota. So he went like this and then like this. But it got him thinking about doing a natural burial. And so he went to seek out a place where he could have a natural burial performed, and that's when he found us. So he called us, and it was a Wednesday, and said, hey, Mandy, one of our other funeral directors, Mandy, I would love to do human composting, but I know that's not legal in our state. And Mandy said, oh no, we've actually got a way to do that for you. What he didn't know was that 3 days previous to that, I had just gotten back from the first ever body composting conference in Denver. So this was in March of 2023. And I had gone to this body composting conference, and I was one of very, very few funeral homes that was there, but we were so interested in this that I wanted to hear more, even though we moved to the state. So I went out there and I met with people who were just stakeholders and providers, and there's 3 providers from Seattle, 1 from Denver, because it's legal in Washington as well. And I made a really good connection with some people from Washington State at Return Home, because they had a similar vibe that we did. We were really heart-centered and love-based, if that's a weird way to say that, but it really is. We love and respect every single person that we serve at our facility. So we connected with them, and I came back and I talked to our funeral directors on Monday, and I said, you guys, we have got a system now that we can provide this to people, because Return Home at that time had provided this service to people in 18 different states. They knew how to do it. They said, we absolutely can do this. We can transport people to our facility and take them into our care without having to have them embalmed. And we can do that with commercial flight and thermal preservation. So we use dry ice for preservation to get folks out to Washington. So I was like, yes, we can say yes to this right now. That was Monday. Wednesday is when Steve called us. So we got to help Steve have his final wish in disposition because we said yes to this and said, we can do this. Instead of saying, no, but, so that was a big deal for us. So what is natural organic reduction? That is a very good question. That is the scientific term. And the way that they say this is that it mimics what happens on a forest floor. So we allow, when we do green burial is a great option, but it is still an anaerobic process. So when you bury someone in the ground, then you cover them with the earth on top of them. There's not airflow there. So it takes time for that natural breakdown to happen. It for sure happens, it just takes time. But if you think of leaves on a forest floor, they break down a little bit faster because there's oxygen around them. It's an aerobic process. So the idea of NOR is to mimic that in a sort of controlled way, because we can't leave humans out in the forest floor, that would be disturbing forever. So yeah, I mean, if we don't laugh, then we cry, and that's just that's not the best option. So here's the science behind it. The people think like, okay, so do you have to heat? Do you have to do heat? Do you have to do what? How does it turn into compost? It works very naturally. And the joke that I often make is that your body has been waiting to compost you since the day you were born. You have so many wonderful bacteria in your gut and on your skin. We have lots of bacteria. There's one specific bacteria inside of our gut that when you pass away, when those systems stop containing bacteria in your gut, it will double in population in about 15 minutes. It's ready to go. So you don't have to add anything. So what they do is it creates a process that is exothermic. The heat that happens naturally because those microbes generate heat when they get to work. So the process is that the body, there we go, is laid in. And that on the left-hand side is the vessel. It looks, I don't know, it kind of looks like a chest freezer. But everybody's got a different process. There's different providers and different technology and different processes. But there's a laying in ceremony. So they open the vessel, they lay wood chips and alfalfa hay, which also contributes some microbes, and about 50% moisture in the biologics that are in there. They add the body naturally, there's a wisp that they call it, is a material that covers you, and it's all organic material. And the family is welcome to be there, the family does not have to be there. There's all kinds of ceremony that has just organically grown up out of this. There was one young man who passed away, and his friend had very long hair, and his friend cut off his hair and added it with him. And what they did not expect to have happen was all the other friends who were there started cutting off pieces of their hair and adding it. And so a piece of that went with them. How cool is that? And they didn't plan for it. It just sprouted up out of the impulse of the moment. And so the laying in ceremony is beautiful. When Steve passed away, because he died last September, yeah, we saw him in March, and then I filmed him in June, and then he passed away in September. When he passed away, one of our funeral directors and I actually went out to Seattle for his laying-in ceremony. His wife and daughters didn't want to go with, and that was fine. We respect what anybody has capability for or does or does not want to do. So we went out with him and said we'd take good care of him. And it was beautiful. You guys, it was the most respectful and gorgeous thing, because it's just this natural laying in, and they add more organics over the top. They close his vessel, and that is actually Steve's vessel on the bottom and the middle. And they will let people post pictures. His wife and family sent Christmas cards. So the Christmas cards that they had, so he's decorated down there, and the transformation takes about 6 to 8 weeks. So during that time, airflow is going through there. It's drawing ambient air in. There's no oxygen added. There's no other kinds of gases. It's just ambient air gets pulled in, because during an exothermic process, when those microbes are going and doing their work, they're drawing air in. It's like breathing. It's like fire almost, where it pulls in oxygen. So you can feel it. You put your hand next to the vessel and feel oxygen and ambient air being pulled in. And then the process is happening in there naturally, and then it exhausts out the other side. The air that comes out of there, you would have concerns, right? Everyone would be like, doesn't smell. That's obviously what you're thinking about. Like, why would you not? And it surprisingly doesn't. The people at Return Home said they way over-engineered their ventilation system because aerobic breakdown has a lot less odor than anaerobic breakdown. So but they do filtrate the air that's coming out of there. And after about 6 to 8 weeks, it goes through a process of sorting out what remains there. The harder tissue, the bones, takes more time to break down. So what they do and what's part of this process is that they process the bone material down to like a meal and then reincorporate it with the compost and let it cure for about another 30 days afterwards. At the end of that, there's air that's pulled through it that is actually mechanical air that goes through it to dry it. But at the very end, there's no DNA left. There's no recognizable parts of the human body. It is nutrient-dense regenerative compost. And then you can do with that what you want. Some people take it's about a yard of compost, which is 200 to 300 pounds. So it's a big amount of compost, but you can take it all back with you. We have one person that we provided this service for. They are going to use it at his cabin. You guys, both of the people that we composted are named Steve. It's very confusing. And we will compost people who are not Steve. Just so you know that. But the other Steve, they're going to do a restoration project at his cabin to restore native grasses in that area, which is just so cool. And his other Steve, Steve Wheeler, who you saw at the beginning, his wife asked for a portion to be sent back to her to plant a tree. And the rest of it went to a woodland restoration area in Seattle. So there's a choice there. Like you can have your compost back, or you can leave it and have it be put to good purpose in Washington State. So that gets us to, where are we in Minnesota? Why are we doing this in Washington? Why do we have to put a body on a commercial flight to send them to Washington State when we could just do this here? We asked the same question. So last year, during the beginning, I don't know, we're just a quick little civics rundown. You introduced legislation, and it's good for the 2-year session. And that's how that works. So it got introduced last year, but they had a very busy session last year. And it was a financial year, so they do finances 1 year and not financial things kind of the other year. So there was a big budget year last year, so they had a lot of things they had to get through, and this kind of got put on the back burner. This year, it has, there's 2 companion bills, one in the House, one in the Senate of Minnesota, that are being heard, sponsored by Representative Hewitt and Senator Marty. And those have been heard in committee. We have an absolute bulldog of a former senator named Carolyn Lane, who has taken the mantle, and that she feels very, very passionately about this, as we do, and has been a tremendous guide for us in navigating the political arena, which is not where we live, but she does. So thankfully she has been there with us. So they have been heard in committees. And I testified at both the House and the Senate committee to share Steve's story. And they went through committee and have been laid over to be included in the omnibus bill, where they take, each committee has a big old bill that they just put a bunch of different bills into and pass it as one instead of each individual bill being passed. So our hope is we are working with the MFDA, the Minnesota Funeral Directors Association, to get language right that they're comfortable with. And make an amendment to the existing bill as it was submitted, and hopefully all of those things can come together and they can be included in the omnibus bill and be approved by the end of session, which is coming up here in May. It's really intense. You guys, you get involved in the politics side of this, and boy, it's really busy, really fast, and it's just like, it's action all the time. So that's very exciting for us. I can't not right click, okay. So I'm gonna pause this. So I think we need a microphone to go to that, to see if that works, because some of you guys are students. Never answer questions. All right, so. You got it?
Yep.
Did you hear sound coming
Yeah.
out of there? Okay, so we're gonna hear directly from Steve. Steve let me record him in June so we could share his story. And actually we had this queued up to play at the Senate hearing. We had a difficulty, couldn't do it. But they got to see Steve's face, and he was enthusiastic that we be able to use his story to help make this a legal form of disposition. So anybody here can have this option, make it more accessible financially, and not have to involve 2 funeral homes and flying someone else to Seattle. So here we go. And like he said, every part of green burial, it's not like we're saying, we're not going to admonish anyone for what is culturally significant to them. For some people, embalming and caskets and all is very, very significant to them and their culture. And we're not going to come down on that. But the more options we make available for people, the better off we're going to be. And the more people can lean toward an ecological disposition option. We talk about this, that, you know, the cremation rate in Minnesota, the flame cremation rate is about, well, the cremation rate is about 70%. And most of it, the vast majority, is flame cremation. And we say, you know, I don't think the cremation rate is 70% because people are super excited about cremation. It's just literally the only option people have been given besides embalming, traditional casket, and vault. So we say it's not just traditional burial, flame cremation, it's those two, and green burial, and water cremation, and natural organic reduction. So we want to empower people to have a meaningful disposition at the end of their lives. It should be something that can reflect your values in your life. And so we think that the more choice people have, the better they're going to feel about the choices that they make about their own disposition. So we are, just a little side note, we are having a, there we go. We are having a Green Funeral Expo on Saturday, May 18th from 10 to noon in White Bear Lake, which you might be like, where in the world is that? It sounds like a different country. No, we are Lake Minnetonka Northeast. Yeah. So we have, like, your downtown Wayzata. I love Wayzata because it's very similar to our downtown White Bear, in that we still have downtowns. We have a big lake and we have a cute little downtown, which is very nice. So if you want to come up, there's a QR code that you can use to sign up. You can also sign up. I brought my laptop there. We also have a brochure, completely recycled brochure that is available for Ontario, and then Aquamation brochure if you're curious about that as well. And we will open it up for questions from anybody. So if you have questions or thoughts, we can, and anybody online, if you do, there's a chat. You guys, are you able to view the chat, or is it just coming through here? Oh. Sorry. Sound streams. Oh, is the mic off?
It is now.
Apologies, but if anyone has any questions, yes, ask us anything.
Oh, here, let's use the mic though.
Oh, yeah.
A question and observation. Is Outlet available here in Minnesota? And secondly, after the family service, in my case at Lakewood, where they reversed the vault, say it takes a couple of years to convert my casket into the earth. So what? What's the value of accelerating it? So what? You know, the importance of the service has already been done. I'm reintegrating back into the earth. Your thoughts?
Which part of the alkaline hydrolysis? So the alkaline hydrolysis is available in Minnesota.
It is.
It is.
Okay.
And currently there's about 6 machines out there in Minnesota.
Okay.
And we partner with one in Savage, Minnesota. Goodbye.
And yeah, we were actually, Minnesota is the first state to legalize alkaline hydrolysis because it is the disposition of choice for the Mayo Clinic in their body bequest program. So they were big advocates for this, and I think it was 2006 that I used to say 2003, but I talked to the guy who helped legalize it, he said it was 2006. So, and then the other question the difference between green burial what I'm hearing you ask is what's the difference between green burial and the natural organic reduction? And what's the value? The value is personal. If you want to have a place that has permanent memorialization like at Lakewood and have the process happen interred in the ground, that's totally valid and a good choice. The other one so why someone would choose composting instead would be probably so that it doesn't have permanently designated land to that, because if you think of Lakewood, it's gorgeous. I love Lakewood.
Right.
But it's not a natural habitat and it requires landscaping and fertilization and things like that. Some people, maybe it's not a fit for them.
Yeah.
And they like the idea of being, instead of being interred in the ground, being something functional, which the compost is functional. So it's just a personal choice. Yeah. And then we had a question over here, if you don't mind, pass the
not specifics, but cost comparison of flame cremation to these various things you're talking about.
Yes, so there's not a huge cost difference. So most funeral homes are gonna find that the cost is about the same. Why is it about the same? I will say alkaline hydrolysis or aquamation does cost more to do. So the process, the chemicals needed, it's a little bit more costly there. But with flame-based cremation, you need something called an alternative burial container, or you need some type of container for your physical body to go in. So you have to purchase or provide something like that to a funeral home. With alkaline hydrolysis or aquamation, you do not need to purchase that. So when you kind of put it all out, they about equal out the same. So the cost is not a difference to the consumer or the customer.
That's the way we do it. The way we do it is we wanted to make it as accessible to people and not have the price be a barrier. And also the time difference weighs into for most places when they charge more for alkaline hydrolysis, because you can do a cremation in about 2 hours and a flame cremation, and a water cremation takes about 6 to 8.
Yeah, so you'll see variations among funeral homes, but that's how we charge.
Because we wanted to make it so people were easy to choose aquamation if they wanted it.
One of the slides showed working with Minnesota Funeral Association. I think we all know anyone that has anything to do with burial, traditional funeral home, whatever. You go to that mortuary and the costs just go up. Now, you obviously are working with your existing funeral home. Do you hear resistance from, what's the lobbyist that's lobbying against this being legal in Minnesota? I mean, funerals are big business. It's big money, and I'll just run a casket. I had a brother whose wife passed away in October out in Washington. She wanted to be involved, blah, blah, blah. The guy at the funeral home said, well, see this casket, I can sell it to you for $4,000, but if you order it online, it costs $1,000, And so I guess bottom line is, what's the resistance in the state? Why hasn't it passed in the state?
Thank you, good question. So I don't want to throw the MFDA under the bus. They, I think probably the biggest point of resistance we got was in other states, like in Washington, we use the language, or Carolyn Lane used the language from the Washington bill for the Minnesota bill, and just kind of was, keeping it consistent with the law language, consistent with practices we use for alkaline hydrolysis, for flame cremation, things like that, for transportation, all of the things that go into it. There was an assumption it was going to be here like it was in Washington, where you pass the law, you make it a legal form of disposition, and then you work out the rules between when it gets passed and when it gets enacted, which would be July of 2025, July 1st, 2025. What we discovered and didn't expect was that the Minnesota Department of Health does not do rulemaking outside of the legislation. Does that make sense? So all of the rules had to be in the legislation. So specific scientific things like the temperature at which the body has to, the vessel has to get up to 131 degrees Fahrenheit and maintain that temperature naturally for 72 hours. And then at the very end, there has to be testing to make sure that there's that the compost that's resulting meets Minnesota health standards for compost. So that wasn't in there. And I mean, in hindsight, it was a good thing that the MFDA was pushing back, because that got those pieces of information in there that are important for the safety of the entire program. So something interesting to point out here is the difference between cremation and NOR is that if you want to start a crematory and you have a license for it and you do all the right things, you call up Matthews or American Cremation or Facultative and say, I would like to buy a crematory. And they will say, we will sell you a crematory. With natural organic reduction, every provider is engineering their method with the same science, that's based in the same science, and the process is similar, but everybody is building their own vessels. So there's no one consistent form of this process, because it is an organic process. You just have to create a vessel for the process and a monitoring system to make sure you're monitoring temperatures and building out the whole process. So that's a big difference, because there's not just one thing that you buy. It has to be created. So that's where the MFDA was pushing back, because they're like, we got to get all this stuff in here. And actually, I have a meeting with the MFDA and other people, stakeholders, on Tuesday to make sure we're all in line, so there's no pushback when this goes to the final, moving on to the other stuff. Okay. Yeah. Any questions?
What happens to the remains that are not deteriorated, like the teeth, artificial hips, bone plates? What happens to those things?
During composting or during the composting, things like that, like Taylor was describing, that process where after the first 6 to 8 weeks, once the heat rises and drops, then they know all the organic material has been broken away, is gone. They kind of do a little turning process, and then it's very similar to cremation, where they take all of that material that's inside that vessel and they send it through a system. It's like a giant machine that allows it to process it down into that small parts. Other things like knee replacements, large metal pieces that are not broken down, gets removed. Same as in cremation, flame-based cremation, water-based cremation, any non-organic material that cannot be broken down during that process is removed. Most often that goes through medical recycling, and that all happens during that part where they process it all back. So it's kind of similar in the end to cremation, where it does that process down period. But in this case, it needs extra time to dry to create that compost.
I'm wondering how any of the processes you've been telling us about intersect with organ donation and intersect with donating one's body for medical research.
Yes. Yeah. So for organ donation, the first part of that, there is no problems with, if you wish to donate portions of your body, tissue, bones, eyes, whatever you want to donate, that can all happen with natural burial, any type of cremation, and even composting. All of that can happen naturally. With donating to medical sciences, because you are donating yourself to that program, they offer that federal disposition to you. So like the Anatomy Bequest program at the U of M, I think a lot of people are familiar with that. When you donate your body to that program, they use that for medical research. I have actually benefited from that program. So if you are on the list, thank you very much. So they use your body for whatever amount of time. It can be 6 months, it can be 18 months. At the end of that, they provide you, and it is alkaline hydrolysis, they will cremate your body. So that is how you are returned to your family. That is explained in the process of that second. So typically you'll get that alkaline hydrolysis released back. I believe U of M does allow you to choose flame or alkaline hydrolysis, but with the natural burial, they do not. So you'd be going one of those cremation routes if you sign up for medical donation, just because of the length of time.
And something worth remembering with that, if you want to do an anatomical bequest, or if you want to donate your body for scientific purposes, make sure that you are obviously we want everyone to make a plan, to write something down, tell your next of kin, please make a plan, talk about this. It's a hard thing to talk about. And people who might be surviving you are going to have a hard time talking to you about it. So if you can initiate the conversation, it's a huge weight off of them, and it just creates so much clarity at the time when people need to know. They need to know these things. There's no question of what my mom or dad or my aunt or uncle would have wanted. So when you're making that plan, make sure that you talk to the medical bequest program that you want to use, and make sure that you know which program you want. Also keep in mind, there is a pretty high rejection rate for anatomical bequest. So do they need your body at that time? I mean, because you can't control when you're gonna die, and they can't control how many bodies they need at that time, or if they need any at all. So always plan for a secondary option there if you're gonna do body bequest, because then say, okay, if it's not needed and this is not an option, my second choice is, and then find your disposition of choice there.
And what Taylor said, they have also, the U of M has very strict guidelines of what they will accept. So if you do pass away due to a viral infection or things like that, they may deny you due to medical reasons. So it's always good to have a backup.
I'll just add on an option with that. National Institute of Health has a program with brain research, especially for people that have passed away with Alzheimer's. And there's a really slick way where you've contacted ahead of time and got all the moving parts in place. So when the death happens, within 24 hours, the brain is the local funeral home or however you've arranged it, gets it to the right place for the brain to be removed, and then the body can, whatever you choose for the rest of the body. But they also take brains for controls. So it's just not people that have Alzheimer's or forms of dementia, but they do need control brains too.
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of different choices out there. I worked with a lady who had early onset Alzheimer's and donated in Madison. So we actually, when she passed, transferred to UW Madison. So there's a lot of great things that you can do to donate. And like I said, I benefited from donating their body. So it's a huge thing that I am very grateful for.
And also, again, all of that, do the research, find out things, tell somebody. But so many people don't write it down, they don't tell somebody, and then, at the time, people are feeling grief, they're feeling things, and they just don't know where to look.
Just to clarify one point, if you do use medical school donate your body, did you think you I thought I understood you to say, then your body is cremated, which I know by that, it can't go through the compost.
Not right now, not at this point. They don't have that system set up for them. Once it becomes legal, I don't know what will happen. As it becomes legal in Minnesota, they may allow you to do that. I don't, in terms of how we can do it now with shipping to Seattle, it would not be an option.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
So I article in Star Trek a couple months ago about composting, and I vaguely remember that article saying there were 3 cemeteries in Minnesota that supported composting, but the detail is in the sheet, if you will. Is that correct? So it's cemetery specific?
Not that I'm aware of right now, like for human composting or for natural burial. For composting, I haven't heard any cemeteries right now that are cemetery specific for supporting that. It kind of is up to families what they wish to do with it at this point, because it's so new, I don't think cemeteries have been able to adapt.
Yeah, it'll be a separate facility. I don't know if they're gonna permit it to be on cemetery land, but it's going to be a facility that is meant for natural organic production.
Wow. Anything else?
Simply so that I can repeat this correctly. Currently at Lakewood, you can have an open bottom to the vessel. The cask.
Well, no, I'm sorry, the outer burial container.
Yes, so I did call
Is
Lakewood.
that the vault?
Yes, so I did call Lakewood before this meeting, so I wanted to make sure I was speaking intelligently, because every cemetery is different. So in Minnesota, each cemetery is allowed to create their own rules and regs. Some have boards, some have owners, so each cemetery creates their own rules. So I did call over to Lakewood just to make sure, because I know they don't have natural burial right now, and I know they don't have that hybrid option. But I did talk to a gentleman there, and he said they do allow, so for a bottomless vault. And what that looks like means that your casket or your container, whatever you pick out, goes directly onto the earth. So you can be, you don't have, they don't require embalming, they don't require any type of, material of the casket. But what it means is that instead of having a vault that it comes, it captures the whole casket to kind of protect that casket from earth elements. It has no, but it protects the earth on top, so it allows us to meet the requirements of protecting the earth levels.
So just so we're using two different terms. There's the earth that we're concerned about, and then there's landscaping. So at Lakewood, the container that she's talking about, so imagine a box, right? And it's got all the sides on it, it's got 6 sides of the box, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So instead of having 6 sides to the box, because usually an outer burial container or a vault is the umbrella term is outer burial container, and then a vault is there's a grave liner, which is usually like concrete. And then there's a vault, which is usually made of concrete, metal, there can be a bronze one if you're real fancy. So what we're talking about is the outer burial container is a grave liner. So it's like a concrete box, basically. So it has 5 sides and then a lid. So instead of using the lid, you don't use the lid. We lay the body directly on the ground. It could be in a shroud, it could be on a carrier, any of the green options for transportation. And then it's set right on the ground. And then we take that outer burial container, that 5-sided, turn it over and set it down. So it maintains the integrity of that space for the surface landscaping. And then they put in earth on top of it or dirt on top of it and level it out so that it stays nice and flat. Have you ever been to a European cemetery and all of the headstones are like this? Yeah. It's because they didn't use vaults. So over time, they sprayed up when they put it in there, but over time, the casket's gonna collapse. And so when that happens, the earth collapses too, and the headstone goes like this. So the interest of the cemetery is to keep their ground flat. So when she said that there's often an extra charge for a green interment at a hybrid cemetery, so they have nice flat landscaping. In order to keep that sustained and repaired over time, they charge an extra fee for a green burial because they're gonna have to backfill dirt and reseed the surface to make sure that it stays nice and flat. Does that help?
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Anything else?
We're there, we're 10:15.
No question is, we've heard it all.
Yeah, so if you have any other questions, we'll be around, but I wanna make sure I wanna be respectful of your time and your services today, so.
So you had some literature there too,
Yeah, we
right?
do have literature, so we have a brochure about aquamation from the providers of aquamation. And then we have the Terra Green Burial one, which talks about the 3 disposition types and has our contact information on it if you wanna get a hold of us. And if you're interested in coming to the to the seminar on
May
May
18th.
18th, thank you. You can just find it
Saturday,
right
May
here.
18th.
Yeah, this is our own, Saturday, May 18th. This is our own website, and we don't give your information to anybody because we're not in the business of sharing information. So if you want to sign up, you sure can. It's free. It's from 10 to noon. So thank you all. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.